My dear friends, I want to share with you something that will make you think deeply about what true faith really means. This is the story of Rebecca Miller, a woman who thought she knew everything about being a good Christian. She was one of the youngest church leaders in her town. Everyone looked up to her. She was always helping others and never missed a church service. But one night, during a bad headache that made her pass out, Rebecca had a vision that changed her life forever. What she saw in the churches around her city and the voice she heard from heaven will make all of us ask ourselves if we really know God, or if we are just pretending to have faith. I will tell you this story exactly as it was told to me. Nothing has been changed or left out. Please listen carefully until the end so you can understand what happened to her. I hope this blesses you as much as it blessed me. Before I continue, please tell me where you are listening from. It makes me feel closer to you even though we are far apart. Please hit the like button too. This helps more people see this video who need to hear this story. Leave a comment below and tell me what you think about what happened to Rebecca. Don't forget to follow our channel for more stories like this one. Now let me tell you what happened. My name is Rebecca Miller and I am 29 years old. I need to tell you that I have always been the kind of person everyone calls a church person. You know what I mean? Always in the front row on Sunday, ready to help with anything, and I knew all the church songs by memory. But what happened to me last year changed everything I thought I knew about believing in God. I grew up in a house where going to church was not just something we did once a week. It was who we were as a family. My grandmother always said that our whole family was built around the church. She was right about that. I could say Bible verses before I could even tie my shoes properly. When I was in high school, I was already leading the young people's group and planning trips to help others. Everyone said I was meant to work for God. After I finished college, I worked even harder in the church. I became a church leader when I was only 25 years old. I was the youngest person to ever do that job in our church. I planned church dinners, took care of the children's programs, and never missed a single service. If the church doors were open, I was there. People came to me when they had problems or questions about God. I felt important and useful, like I was really doing good work for God. But here is something nobody talks about. Sometimes when you get too busy doing things for God, you actually move away from really knowing God. I was so busy doing all these church activities that I forgot about just spending quiet time with God. I was putting on a show instead of really living my faith. The big surprise came when I was not expecting it at all. I was driving home from another church meeting. We were planning our yearly church fair when I got a terrible headache. I had to pull my car over to the side of the road and then everything went dark. What happened next, I still don't know if it was a vision, a dream, or something else completely different. All I know is that it felt more real than anything that had ever happened to me before. I found myself floating above my own body, looking down at myself sitting in my car with my head on the steering wheel. But I was not scared at all. I felt this amazing peace like being wrapped up in the softest, warmest blanket you could imagine. Then I started going up higher above the trees and buildings until I could see my whole city spread out below me. That's when I saw all the churches. Every single church was bright with lights like it was Sunday morning, but this was happening on a Wednesday night. But something was very wrong. I could see through the walls of the buildings and I watched terrible things happening inside. At my own church, Pastor Johnson was standing where he usually preaches, but his face looked confused and scared. The church leaders were running around shouting and trying to keep everyone calm. All the people in the church were completely panicked. They were screaming and crying and looking through empty seats because that's what I noticed. So many seats were empty. It wasn't that people had not come to church that night. It was because some people had just disappeared. Here and there, scattered all around the church building, maybe 5 or 6 people out of 200 had just vanished. Their clothes were still in their seats where they had been sitting. Their Bibles were still open to whatever page they had been reading. I watched Mrs. Patterson, who had been teaching Sunday school for 30 years, shaking the empty dress that her friend Susan had been wearing just a few minutes before. I saw Michael Torres, who worked with the young people, staring at the empty space where Lisa Williams had been sitting. Lisa was a quiet girl who didn't talk much but always had this special glow in her eyes when she prayed. The same thing was happening in church after church all across the city. Pastors who had built huge churches with thousands of members watched as maybe only 12 people disappeared from their packed buildings. Church leaders who had worked faithfully for many years found themselves left behind, while the man who cleaned the bathrooms was one of the few who had vanished. I wanted to yell and warn them and explain what was happening, but I couldn't. I could only watch as I floated higher and higher above everything, and that's when I heard the voice. It wasn't loud, but it filled everything, the sky, the air, my whole being. It sounded like water flowing over rocks, soft but strong, very old, but also right there in that moment. The voice said, "I look for hearts, not crowds. Many worked in my name but never knew me." Those words hit me like someone had punched me because right then I realized I was seeing myself in those confused churches below. I was Pastor Johnson standing there shocked and confused. I was Mrs. Patterson shaking empty clothes and wondering how this could happen to such faithful people. I had been so busy building my reputation as a godly woman, so focused on making sure people saw me as good and dedicated, that I had forgotten to actually connect with the God I claimed to serve. I knew the Bible very well, but when was the last time I had sat quietly and just listened for God's voice? I could organize events and lead committees, but when had I last felt that simple joy and wonder at God's love? The vision kept going. I saw the people who had been taken away. The thing that surprised me was that they weren't perfect. They weren't the loudest Christians or the ones who knew the most about the Bible. They were the ones who loved quietly, who helped others without wanting credit, who talked to God like he was their best friend instead of some scary boss. There was old Frank who cleaned the church parking lot every Saturday morning and never wanted anyone to thank him for it. There was young Lisa who worked 2 jobs but still found time to sit with lonely old people after church services. There was Robert, who used to have problems with drugs but had only been saved for 6 months, yet talked to Jesus like they had been best friends forever. What they all had the same wasn't perfect knowledge about God or impressive records of service. It was relationship. Real, honest, messy, beautiful friendship with God. As I watched all of this happen, I felt something breaking inside my heart. All those years of trying hard, of putting on a show, of trying to earn God's love by doing good things and having perfect church attendance, it had been missing the point completely. I had been playing church instead of being the church. The voice spoke again, softer this time, filled with deep sadness. "Rebecca, my child, I have been calling your name, but you have been too busy answering to everyone else." Then everything went white. I woke up in my car with paramedics knocking on my window. They said I had been unconscious for 20 minutes. They wanted to take me to the hospital, but I told them I was fine. How could I explain that I had just experienced the most important 20 minutes of my life? Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. Was it real? Was it just my mind telling me what I already knew deep down? Does it matter? The message was clear either way. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat on my bedroom floor with no Bible, no study book, no plan. I just talked to God like he was sitting right there with me. I told him about my fears, my doubts, my loneliness, even though I was surrounded by church people all the time. I admitted that I had been so busy trying to impress him that I had forgotten to love him. And for the first time in forever, I felt him there. Not in some big supernatural way, but in that quiet, steady presence that says, "I've been here all along, waiting for you to stop talking and start listening." The changes in my life didn't happen right away. I didn't quit church or become some kind of rebel, but I did start saying no to some commitments. I stepped down from a couple of leadership jobs. I started coming to church not because I had to be there, but because I wanted to worship. I began reading the Bible differently, not to find clever points for my next lesson, but to hear what God was saying to me personally. I started praying throughout the day, having little conversations instead of formal speeches. I looked for God in quiet moments instead of just during the big emotional church services. The strange thing is some people at church didn't like these changes. When I stepped back from some of my responsibilities, a few members made comments about me losing my commitment or going through a phase. But others, the ones who had been quietly seeking that same real relationship, they understood. Pastor Johnson even came up to me one day and said he had noticed something different about me. "You seem more peaceful," he said, "like you found something you were looking for." I have found something. I found the difference between knowing about God and actually knowing God, between serving in his name and serving from his heart, between being religious and having a relationship. Now, a year later, I still go to church, I still help and volunteer. But my reasons are completely different. I'm not trying to earn gold stars or build my reputation as a good Christian. I'm simply responding to love with love. And you know what? This changed everything. My prayers feel like conversations instead of performances. Reading the Bible feels like getting a letter from someone who loves me instead of studying for a test. Even my service comes from a place of joy instead of duty. I still don't know if that vision was literally real or just my heart's way of showing me what I needed to see, but I'm grateful for it either way. It woke me up from sleepwalking through my faith. It reminded me that God isn't impressed by our busy schedules or our perfect church attendance. He's looking for hearts that are genuinely seeking Him. The empty churches in my vision weren't empty because people weren't religious enough. They were empty because people had focused so much on the activities of faith that they'd missed the relationship that faith is supposed to be about. Listen, if you're reading this and you feel like you've been going through the motions, whether in your faith, your relationships, your work, whatever, it's not too late to wake up. It's not too late to stop performing and start being real. It's not too late to put down the mask and show up as yourself. God sees your heart anyway. The people who truly love you want to know the real you, not some perfect version you think they expect. And you deserve to live honestly, to pursue genuine relationship instead of empty performance. Take it from someone who spent years trying to earn love she already had. The most beautiful life is the one where you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be real. That's where peace lives. That's where joy grows. And that's where you'll find the kind of connection with God and with others that makes everything else worth it. Don't wait for a vision or a wake-up call. Start today. Put down the performance. Pick up honesty and see what beautiful things grow from that real ground. Trust me, it's worth it. Rebecca's story reminds us that God isn't impressed by our busyness, our titles, or our reputation in church. So let me ask you, are you building a resume of religious activity or a relationship with the living God? The truth is, when that day comes, only one of those will matter. If this testimony stirred something inside you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And don't forget to follow our channel for more powerful encounters that wake you up to what really matters, knowing Him. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay blessed.